Okay, so like imagine this. You're the new person at like a super busy office and you like need to ask a simple favor. But um how do you even do that in English?
Right.
That's what we're diving into today. This hilariously awkward situation from an English lesson called Asking for Favors, Elementary Office English.
Hmm.
But get this, it's not just about the language. It's about those like cringy office moments that we all secretly relate to.
Yeah, I think what's so fascinating is how this lesson uses a simple favor to like expose all those like unspoken rules of office dynamics.
Yeah.
Like even asking for a pencil can feel like you're navigating a minefield sometimes.
So true. And the lesson starts by defining a favor as like a small, helpful thing someone does for you.
Right.
Passing a stapler, covering a coffee run, or even spotting someone a few bucks. We've all been there.
It's interesting because these small favors are actually like these tiny little social transactions that build trust and rapport, but in a fast-paced environment, those transactions can get lost in the chaos.
Absolutely. And that's where our main character, Rachel, comes in. She's a new employee, and let's just say her first day is a master class in awkward encounters.
Oh, yeah.
Each colleague she approaches is too busy to help,
Uh-huh.
and it just gets more and more cringeworthy.
I love it.
It's so good.
The way the lesson sets this up is brilliant. It's like a sitcom playing out like those universal anxieties we all have about like fitting in and being seen in a new environment.
Yeah. First, she bumps into someone prepping for a very important meeting, instant brush off.
Oh, yeah.
Then another colleague claims to be about to meet an important client and suggests Sean.
Oh.
Out strike two. Poor Rachel finally corners Sean, only to find him drowning in a deadline.
Oh, no.
It's almost painful to watch.
Yeah, the lesson taps into something very real here. That feeling of invisibility when you're the newbie.
Yeah.
It's like your needs are somehow less important than everyone else's urgent tasks.
It's so true. And here's the kicker. Rachel's simple request is just to find the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
The frustration of not being able to get a simple question answered is palpable.
And that's where this like basic English lesson gets really clever.
Yeah.
On the surface, it's teaching vocabulary.
Right.
But underneath, it's exploring those unspoken hierarchies of the workplace.
Totally.
Like who has the time to answer a simple question? Who gets ignored?
I'm hooked. Okay, so let's break down some of the language takeaways that the lesson highlights.
Okay.
The first phrase that jumped out at me was on board, meaning welcome to the company or team.
Right.
The lesson gives examples like welcome on board, we're thrilled to have you join us, and thank you, I'm really excited to be part of the team. I've heard great things about this project.
It's a great example of how language reflects a company's culture. Like, think about it. You're not just joining a team. You're on board, like a ship setting sail towards a common goal.
Right.
It's about creating a sense of shared purpose and belonging.
Yeah.
But as Rachel's experience shows, actually feeling on board can be a whole different story.
Totally. Next we have about to, which means you're going to do something very soon. Like, I'm about to grab a coffee. Or in more panicked office scenario, I'm about to miss this deadline.
What's interesting about to is how it conveys urgency and a sense of being in control.
Yeah.
Even if you're secretly drowning, it's almost like a subtle power move in the office. You're too busy to help,
Right.
but you're busy doing something important.
Right. It's like a shield against interruptions, which, speaking of the lesson, also highlights the word interrupt, meaning to stop someone while they're doing something. And as Rachel quickly discovers, interrupting people, even politely, can be a recipe for awkwardness.
Oh, totally.
Especially when you're the new kid on the block.
It's fascinating because interrupt has like such negative connotations, but in a fast-paced office, it's almost unavoidable.
Right.
This raises the question, is there a right way to interrupt? And how do you navigate those power dynamics when you're the one needing to get someone's attention?
It's like you said, there's this like unspoken code of conduct for interruptions, and no one gives you the rule book. You just kind of have to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to another interesting word from the lesson, instead.
Yeah.
It simply means in place of. And like the example they give is, I wanted to buy a red sweater, but they didn't have one, so I bought a blue one instead. But think about how often we use instead in the office,
Right.
like to offer alternatives or explain why we can't do something.
Like, I'd love to help, but I have to finish this report instead. Or maybe you could try Sean instead. I think he might be free.
Right.
It's almost like a subtle way of deflecting requests without being completely dismissive.
You've hit on a key point there. It's about managing expectations and like navigating those delicate social dynamics. You want to be helpful, but you also have your own priorities to juggle, and instead kind of helps you strike that balance.
I'm curious, from your experience, are there cultural differences in how people use instead or even how directly they ask for favors?
That's a great question, and the answer is absolutely yes. In some cultures, being direct is seen as rude. You might hint at needing help or use a lot of qualifiers to soften the request.
Right.
In other cultures, getting straight to the point is valued.
So going back to Rachel, could she have phrased her request differently to avoid those awkward interruptions?
Yeah.
Like if she had just said, "Excuse me, where's the bathroom?" instead of, "Can I ask you a favor?" Would that have changed things?
That's an excellent point. Sometimes being overly polite or indirect can actually backfire, especially in a fast-paced environment.
Right.
By framing it as a favor, she unintentionally added a layer of formality that maybe wasn't necessary in that situation.
It's like she accidentally put up a wall. Instead of just asking a simple question and thinking about my own office experiences,
Yeah.
I realize I do that sometimes too. I overthink how to phrase things, and it ends up sounding more complicated than it needs to be.
It's a common trap. We get so caught up in being polite or trying to fit in that we lose sight of the simplest way to communicate. And this lesson, as basic as it seems, highlights that beautifully. It's a reminder that sometimes clarity trumps courtesy, especially when you're just trying to find the bathroom.
I love that. Clarity trumps courtesy. I'm totally stealing that line.
Feel free. It's all about sharing those aha moments. And speaking of, what stood out to you the most from this deep dive? What resonated with your own office experiences?
Honestly, it's made me realize how much I overthink those simple interactions. Like even asking for a stapler can feel like a whole negotiation sometimes.
We've all been there. But by analyzing these seemingly basic words like on board, about to instead, and interrupt, we're actually gaining a deeper understanding of how language shapes those everyday power dynamics.
And like we've unlocked the secret code to navigating those office conversations.
Exactly. And hopefully the next time you find yourself in Rachel's shoes, you'll remember this deep dive and feel a little more confident, a little more prepared to handle those awkward moments with grace.
And maybe even face them with like a little bit of humor.
Absolutely. Because let's face it, office life can be pretty absurd sometimes.
Yeah, it can be so true. Okay, so to wrap things up, we started with this simple English lesson about asking for favors.
Right.
But we ended up uncovering a whole world of unspoken office rules and like communication strategies.
It's amazing how, like, these seemingly basic vocabulary words like
Yeah.
on board, about to instead, interrupt, they actually reveal so much about power dynamics and cultural nuances and that delicate dance of, like, trying to fit in.
Yeah, it's like we've been given a backstage pass to the inner workings of office communication.
Exactly. And I think the takeaway here is that language isn't just about grammar and vocabulary.
Right.
It's about understanding the context, the unspoken rules, and those subtle ways that we use words to, like, navigate those complex social interactions.
So for anyone listening who might be starting a new job or even just trying to get better at communicating in their current workplace,
Yeah.
remember Rachel's story.
Yes. Don't be afraid to be direct and ask for clarification and to own your needs.
Because sometimes the most awkward situations can teach us the most valuable lessons.
And who knows, maybe those lessons will even help you find the bathroom a little faster next time.
That's a win in my book. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the surprisingly complex world of office English. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration of language and communication.